Hi, Mitchell Levy, global credibility expert. I'm excited to have you here because it's the funnest time of my week where I get a chance to talk to some amazing human. And we're talking about the show is Leaders Living Their Values, and we're going to talk about the values of Todd Kuckkahn. Todd, welcome.
Hey, great to be here again, Mitchell. Good to see you.
Oh, it is always good to interact with you. And what I want to do is just sort of throw the ball over the fence and say, Todd, who are you?
Well, I tell you, values is one of my key areas. So I'm on a mission to revolutionize company culture and leadership. And the way we start in that process is working with individuals' core values. And I'm all about adding more value to others than I receive. And I can share my core values right now. They are optimism, trust, honesty, enthusiasm, and teamwork. So hopefully that'll come through during the course of the show and our conversation today.
Yeah, but who are you? Like I see I got the values, but who are you as a human?
I've had some circumstances in my life where the workplace culture has not been what it should be, and I think part of who I am is meaningful engagement. Whether it's a one-on-one situation like this, whether it's a group setting, whether it's an employee-employer relationship, whether it's family, I think that meaningful engagement is so critical, and I think we need to have more of that in the workplace as well, and that's what I like to share. I've been fired 4 times, and all 4 of those times where culture was a big reason for that. And I just hate to see people struggle in the workplace. It's, people don't necessarily want to work. And if we are going to work, let's make it, I guess fun, for lack of a better term. Make it better than tolerable. Let's make it meaningful.
All right. You've given me so much to go with. Thank you. We got at least the next couple hours. No, sorry guys, only 30 minutes. But that said, who are you? Tell me a little bit about your personal life and things there, and then we're going to jump back into the business side.
I've lived in Wisconsin my entire life. The longest I've been out is for a week. Love that. Gone to school at UW-Madison. Right now I've got 4 daughters who are awesome. One just got married in January, destination wedding down in Jamaica. So that was a good time, especially with the Wisconsin winters. Love the state. Like I said, our family's all here, so no need to leave yet. Although I'm itching for some warmer weather.
By the way, there's 2 different directions we can go, and I'm gonna say we have to talk about what meaningful relationships are. That's where I really live, and let's do that. And you could sort of tie in you got fired 4 times because of culture. So let's cover. Actually, I'm trying to figure out which is more. Before we do meaningful relationships, I love that. Tell me, overarching. I'm sort of this culture thing being fired. Thank you for sharing. Tell me what. I don't know if I should say what happened or what does that mean, or is there a trend here? Like once is something, twice, 4 times is I don't know. Is there a trend here? Tell me a little bit.
Yeah, it's like why do I have this guy on my show if he's been fired 4 times? What am I thinking? But I guess the good news is I've had 17 different jobs, so 25% of the time I've been fired. So that helps a little bit. It's not like I've had 5 jobs and I've been fired 4 times. That would be horrible. But yeah, there was one situation went in and the person who hired me, the president, I only interviewed with her, never interviewed with the board of directors, never interviewed with other staff. And it kind of set up, not a red flag, maybe a pink flag. And as I got there, I saw the horrible environment it was. I mean, she was a strong D personality style in this spectrum, very dominant, very driven, that type of person, rare, and actually myself and 2 of the vice presidents, we got together and went to the board of directors, and which is risky, right? To jump over the leader's head and go to the board, but it was just such a caustic, toxic environment. And then after that, the board president actually was friends with the president of the organization. So I was next on the list to be sent out of the room. But, you need to create a culture. I've gone into businesses and worked with them on this, and having conversations, like caring about a series of questions I'll go through is, first of all, it's kind of a softball. Where were you raised? Where were you born? Where do you live? Second question is, who's a leader that's impacted you in your life other than a family member? So you start kind of getting into their psyche and their personality and who's been influential in their life. And then the third question is, talk about a difficult moment in your childhood and growing up. And there have been numerous occasions actually, where I've had people in tears with tissue talking about these situations with people that they're coworkers, and in some cases, people that report to them. And not that you have to cry in the workplace to prove that there's meaningful engagement, but I think we need to get beneath the level of just, walking down the hall saying, "How are you? I'm fine. I'm busy. So am I." I think we need to get deeper than that in the workplace.
All right. So one was a toxic boss. Tell me some of the others.
I would say, well, three of the situations where the bosses were really, really toxic. In one case, I had to report my boss to my board of directors again for misappropriation of funds. And before they could get to the point where they had enough that they could really get her, she got me first and forced me out. And how she ended up getting fired, the final straw was that there was a expense report completed. She had used a university vehicle, and on the expense report, she claimed personal expenses. For what, right? 20, 30, 40 bucks or something. I mean, it was that ridiculous. So that was another one. Another one was a private school that I worked for, and tried to work hard with the relationships with the people who oversaw the school, and never had that many opportunities to have, again, meaningful engagement with them. And some of the things that I did there are still in place. I put in a Project Lead the Way program with some great curriculum, put in a fundraiser that's still around today, raising tens of thousands of dollars, started a capital campaign that they fixed up their facilities. But again, it was that relational thing. And again, based on my core values, that's what I'm all about. I want to have some fun in the workplace. I want to engage with people, have some conversations, and have some conflict, have some constructive conflict along the way.
All right. So this is so fascinating, by the way. Thank you. So we're seeing with a common language, what is the definition of meaningful conversations or meaningful relationships?
I think it's conversations. I talk to people. We should talk about politics and religion in the workplace. And a lot of times I get these moans like, "Well, what? Can you really want to?" But I think it comes down to respecting each other. A meaningful engagement is where you respect each other for what their beliefs are. There's 8 billion different people in the world, and every single person is different, right? Too often we base it on the 10% we see. And it's really that 90%. You asked me 2 or 3 times, "Who are you?" And that's what we need to find out more about. Because if we're in the workplace, you might come in the workplace, and you're down in the dumps, you brought in some baggage, you had a fight with a family member, or your dog didn't go to the bathroom when you went for a walk. And we need to reach out to people and say, "Hey, how's it going today? You don't, looks like things are bothering you." And if they want to talk about it, it's a comfortable environment where you respect each other and you talk about it. And if they say, "You know what? I don't want to talk about it today," you respect the fact that it's something that's private and you don't want to conversate. But I guess I would say that respect is a key part of it. Where we respect each other in the workplace, that's when you're going to get that meaningful engagement, better understand each other. You spend, a minimum of 8 hours a day probably in the workplace, and that's a third of your day. So why not make it at least, respectful, enjoyable, and meaningful?
Yeah, it's interesting as I'm listening to you. Respect is one of the 10 values of credibility. I think part of what I'm hearing, and so let me bring this out, intent and commitment to do the right thing, right? Because what you said was, well, if somebody says, "Hey, I'm having a bad day, don't talk to me," it's very, in a culture that's maybe toxic, it's very easy to say, well, maybe they don't like me, or they're having a bad day with me, or they don't respect me. For somebody to actually go, "Okay, got it," and move on and not care because they know it's not personal, they're respecting the other person, means that they have to have the intent and commitment to love and respect, have that community. Talk about that a little bit more.
Well, I think, you look at statistics, and there's all kinds of studies and reports about communication in the workplace. And again, like you said, the word intent or being intentional, it's a John Maxwell thing. First book I read of his was called Intentional Living. And it's about, we hear people talk about commit random acts of kindness. No, commit intentional acts of kindness. Be intentional about what you're doing, reaching out and having those conversations and relying on your values. But so many people don't know what their values are. They don't know their personality style. And I use a DISC personality style assessment quite a bit. When you start understanding yourself and you work from the inside out, once you understand yourself and have that self-awareness, you can better understand other people. And then you can, I guess, for lack of a better term, you can flex your style. Flex, I said, right? You can flex your style to better communicate with that other person. And then hopefully they're willing to do the same thing. And that's why, like in the workplace, I just had a conversation with somebody that was talking about they're on remote and there's no relationships and their business has changed names and back, a couple times. And you have to be intentional about it. You have to make a commitment. It's like the company that goes through a $10,000, $20,000, $50,000 strategic planning process, and they make all these pretty marketing things with all the colors and diagrams with their mission, vision, and values, and put them up on the wall, and that's it. Well, you got to do something with it. You have to constant reminders about it, right? You have to have it every meeting agenda. Talk for 5 minutes about your company's values, their mission, their vision, where you're going, and create that unifying element amongst the worker. But too often you just, you plaster something on the wall and okay, all right, we're done with that. Let's move on to the new gimmick.
By the way, Dean Miles, thanks for joining us. Appreciate your comment. Those who are on a platform that's not LinkedIn, Dean's comments are always spectacular. It's worthwhile to take a look at this in LinkedIn to see what he says. And for Dean, it was interesting. It's how do you have respect and not seem like you're being the idea of being intrusive versus indifferent, right? And once again, occasionally that happens when I'll tell a tiny story. Every now and then, there might be something going on. Particularly, I mentioned at the beginning, there's all these technology things. My wife will walk into the office and I'm right in the middle of like 5 different technology things piling on. I'm like, and she'll say, honey, can I talk to you about, and I turn around and I go, yeah, can we do this another time? Right. Yep. There are too many plates and some of them are falling. And so it's the respect that she has in me to go, okay, it's not me personally. There's something going on. And the question becomes, how come that doesn't happen in companies or when you're working with companies? And that's what you're doing with others. How do you foster that? How do you make it happen?
Well, I think you almost, you also have to study it. Like I said, using something like a DISC profile, I think is a great tool because it's you sharing the information. It's not your boss, it's not your peers, it's not the board. It's you sharing how you feel about things and exposing your strengths and exposing your weaknesses. And then you focus on your strengths and keep building those and find people who can help you with your weaknesses within the organization. And that's how you start building team. You put people who can complement each other. I tell a story about a woman that I hired to be my replacement, and I was afraid to hire her because she was a single mother, she was Hispanic, she was strong, and she had great relationships in her community. Now, how dumb would it have been for me not to hire her? But I was afraid because I just come off getting a job before I was fired. I was afraid that I might lose some of my respect. She came on, she doubled our major giving. We had 3 incredible United Way campaigns, 11%, and we're great friends and we rocked the world. But I was almost stupid enough not to hire her because I was focusing on the iceberg above the water instead of the iceberg and her strengths that complemented mine below the water. And being, I wasn't intentional, as we've been talking about, but I did hire her. I made a great choice, as it turns out.
That's kind of interesting. How does one recognize that you're potentially not playing to your strengths?
Well, I think part of it is an assessment. I think part of it is the people around you. Do you have a coach? Do you have a mentor who's in your inner circle? Who are the people that are talking to you and seeing that other perspective? because sometimes we get so bogged down in the frame, we don't see what's outside the frame. And we need other people in our lives, like, a lot of the stuff you do, Mitchell, right? We need other people to help draw that out and bring that out. I was on a conversation much like you were having once. It was just it was a coaching call. It wasn't being recorded or streamed. And he said, tell me about some of your accomplishments in your life. So I kind of hemmed and hawed through some that I'm proud of. And he goes, hey, shut up. He said, you have a horrible belief system. You don't believe in what you're doing. I'm like, and he was in Colombia, South America. So, he couldn't have got to me, but I was a little bit afraid. But you have to have those people in your life that are willing to kind of, smack you on the side of the head gently and say, hey, you're not thinking about this right. And that's, again, when you develop those relationships in the workplace, you have those people that you can reach out to, and people outside the workplace as well who might be in your inner circle.
You got me excited about something that someone had mentioned recently, and it's the BS that we have in our lives. And specifically, they're talking about the belief systems, although I often think it's the bullshit we have in our lives. Right? Right. So, and there's a little bit of both. And what happens, and maybe you could talk about an example where this happened to you. A lot of times what happens is our belief systems are given to us, and I'm going to use the word dubious. They're sometimes given from people who we consider credible, like our parents, our grandparents, our bosses, and they may be sharing dubious activities, not necessarily credible stuff. And so we believe them and we start deploying them. Potentially the example of why you didn't hire the person you ended up hiring and worked really well. Have you seen that in the practicing you've been doing?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm trying to think of a quick off the cup example, but yeah, we have that part of our life, probably to age 7, 8, 9, where we're very malleable, and if we're concrete, we're soft, and people can make different impacts during that course of time. Then we have the different experiences in our life that really we draw on and develop, and all the people on that path have those influences on us. Some are good, some are not good. And hopefully you surround yourself with the right people to help you see through who are people that are trying to help you and not. And I would go back to the situation, one of the two situations where I was fired. Fortunately, the people around me, they said, Todd, just hang in there. Keep doing the right thing. Live your values, right? Make the right decisions. Don't go down that road. You did the right thing by reporting. You did the right thing by getting that person out of the organization, even though it came back in the end to bite you. But now I'm in a great place in my life, and I can look in the mirror in the morning and say, I did the right thing. It impacted me greatly at that moment in time. It impacted my retirement funds because I was out for a few months, but I can look in the mirror and say, I did the right thing. And I lived into my values, into my beliefs.
Wow. Yeah. Listen, if you're listening or watching right now, the question is, can you tell that story? Can you tell the story where you did the right thing because it was in your heart, it was in your belief system? By the way, credible.
It's all about integrity, doing the right thing when nobody's watching, and even more so when they are watching. But just living again, and I give 90% of the credit to my parents. They did the right thing, right? And the role model, right? Overused term maybe, but I think it's a pretty important term, because those are the people you see them do things the right way, and you're like, you know what, I want to do that. I want to be like that. I don't want to be like this over here. I want to be that. That's what I want to do.
You just said something that I know it might be very obvious when I make this statement, and I want you to think about an integrity story, something different, maybe a client one where you don't mention the client name. You just said integrity is what you do when nobody's watching, and then also what you do when people are watching. And so it was interesting when I had done the research on credibility, the integrity was the only value that was listed twice. And under the being trustworthy, it's your external integrity, is what do you do when people are watching? How do you present that outside view? And what you just said, it was so obvious, it just hit me in the head, is what do you do when people are not watching? What is your internal integrity? And so that's why it's under being known. When people really get to know you, They know when there's nobody else in the room that you're doing the right thing because you're consistently aligned. And so many of us separate out the external integrity, what we present to the world, versus our internal integrity.
Yeah, I think about yesterday. I was on the airport flying back from the Maxwell Leadership Conference, and 2 different times somebody dropped a piece of paper, right? Nobody else saw it. They didn't know they dropped it. I was the only one in the entire universe, other than God, who knew that had happened. So I had 2 choices, right? I could blow it off. I could have gone and got a drink or something, but I ran after the piece of paper, ran after the person and gave it to them. And they were so, I didn't even know what it was. It could have been a Kleenex or something stupid, but so that's on a real small scale as human beings committing those random acts of kindness intentionally. On a bigger scale, though, I was doing a training for a company, and we're in the 3rd set of trainings, the first one of 3 for that day. And the HR director called me after the first one and said, this didn't work, Todd. I got a couple of emails and it didn't work. We're going to have to take a pause. And I'm like, this is how I make my money. This is how I feed myself and my family. And the initial shock, once that wore off, I said, wait a minute, optimism, trust, honesty, enthusiasm, teamwork. So what am I going to do? I'm going to work with them and give them the best training I could possibly give. I'm going to show my integrity and my desire to live up to the commitment that I made to them initially, even though what I did in that particular case didn't work. The first 2 trainings were great. So we met with their team. We got back together. We finished the trainings. We had one more set of 3 after that. I talked to the HR person. She was apologizing to me for that situation that was really kind of sort of my fault. But she was apologetic that had happened. And I said, oh no, it was a great lesson for me. Just, it was a communication thing, what it really boiled down to. So integrity comes in various sizes of doses, right? It can be a real small thing or it can be a big thing, but it's an important part of who I am.
So it's interesting for those who I'm keeping track here. You obviously appear to come across extremely authentic because you're also being vulnerable in terms of who you are and what you share.
Right.
There's so many amazing elements of credibility that you're just doing because it's who you are.
Right.
So I know this is going to be because of who you are, I feel comfortable asking this question. There's some people I don't want to ask this question because it's going to come across like a sales pitch. The question is, why do people hire you?
I think because of I shouldn't say I think. I know, there's my belief system. I know it's because of who I am. And I appreciate the fact you've seen me as authentic and vulnerable. And I believe that's who I am. And it's developed, of course, over time because of a lot of people in my life, including my family, but other leaders outside of me. For example, going back to the situation where I hired the Hispanic woman, my boss, my leader, the leader of the organization, we had conversations about that. And she asked me the right questions to help me make the right decision. That's what a coach is, right? So too many coaches are telling people or solving problems. As a coach, my job isn't to solve your problem. My job is to help you figure out how to solve the problem by asking you the questions that'll take you in that right direction. So I think that's such an important part of it. I kind of forgot your question because I got so fired up. Oh, well, why would people hire me? But I live my values. I live my values, and I think it doesn't take time for people to see that. And it's what people like. I love the expression, something to the effect that if you lie, you have too much you have to remember, because you got to remember your lies. So it's like, I'm not smart enough to remember all that stuff. So I might as well tell the truth and just tell people the way it is. And everybody has a story to share. Now, not everybody's going to resonate with my story. Some people maybe hung up and are going to watch it on the recording later, but because they can fast forward my parts. But, I have a message. Some people are going to resonate with it. Some people won't. But if I don't share it, people may miss something. And it's the same with you, Mitchell. You share a message, you bring guests on, right? Every guest doesn't resonate with everybody. Maybe you do, sometimes you're on, sometimes you're off too. But if you don't share the message, then who's going to share that message? You're the only one that can do it.
It's so funny. I have to share something and then we'll reach the end. I actually, for the first time, normally I do pretty good. People come on and I took the easy approach as a podcaster for a little bit. Is sometimes I would just book people directly. Like somebody would say, hey, you should talk to this somebody. Great. Here's my link. Have them sign up. And I realized, I need to do the prep call. I just need to do a call. I want to see if there's good chemistry there. And there's this guy I interviewed just recently. Actually, let me rephrase that. There's this guy I talked to in the prep call quite recently. And from the moment he came on, we didn't get along. It was the strangest thing.
Yeah.
And it was kind of because I was kind of interviewing him to see, sometimes I ask curveball questions, and you did a great job. You're just you. You trust that I'm going to try to present you. Actually, let me take the word try. You trust that I will present you in the best way that I feel the audience needs to get to know you.
Yes.
All right. So I was asking questions and he goes, I feel like you're asking me questions to see if I'm worth talking to. And because you know what credibility is, you're trying to sell me credibility. And I'm like, that's really interesting. I don't think I ever tried to do any of that. And then about somewhere between 15 to 17 minutes into it, he goes, yeah, okay. Yeah, this doesn't work. And he just hung up. Like, and it was so funny because I kind of thought, well, what if we did this live, and he hung up, and I go, oh, that's interesting. And by the way, I just sort of saying, if we did that live, I'd still go the time, and I would just say, well, why did that happen? And we would just walk through it. Have you been in situations where the person who's walking in the door, potentially a prospect, isn't the right fit for you?
Yeah.
And talk about that.
I think, well, first of all, you mentioned the word trust, and that's, obviously I've beaten that one pretty well, but that's one of my core values, and it's very important to me. But when I walk into a relationship, I'm 100% trusting people. I mean, every podcast that I apply for or go on, I have no idea who that person is. Other than, I can tell a little bit about them by listening, but I don't know the who part. Like, I love that question you kept asking me. But anyway, but I trust you, and I know you're not going to ask me a question to like catch me. It's not like this is CNN or MSNBC or Fox where you're going to try to do a gotcha. The gotcha is that you want me to share information that might be helpful to the listeners, and that again, how that story resonates with me. And there's people that it doesn't. I'm trying to think of a specific story that it doesn't see. It doesn't take too long to see through. I guess most of that happens, I think, kind of like what you're talking about, the interview case where I've interviewed people, and you can tell within, and there's research about this too. Almost, the first 4 seconds sometimes, or the first 30 seconds, or the first 2 minutes, you can kind of tell, like, okay, this isn't clicking. Look great on paper, had the skills, but you're coming in here to figure out if it's a culture match, and the culture match just it isn't there, but based on the way you're answering these questions. So there, and it's a sense, and I don't know if everybody has it. I think you and I certainly do, but it's a helpful skill, because you can find out disingenuous people, or those that don't have maybe the integrity that you're looking for. Not that they're not always bad people, but just not the right match culturally.
So I got 3 more questions for you, and stick around for the last one, which is always the coolest because it's the Todd inspired question. But first, if people find you and this interesting, how best can they reach out to you?
I do social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, my first name, last name. I've got a website, first name, last name, and you can get that in the show notes and everything, .com. So I'm out, I post quite a bit. So yeah, message me through any one of those. Love to have the chance to talk with you and get to know you more.
And it's Todd Kuckkahn, and I will guarantee that you won't be able to spell it properly if you just do it off the top of your head. So I'll make sure in the link notes that there's a link to his website and LinkedIn profile. All right. So based on this conversation, is there a question I should have asked you that I didn't?
At what point in your life did you decide to become an entrepreneur?
Ooh, that's a great question. please ask yourself that question. What point in your life did you decide to become an entrepreneur?
About 5 years ago, or 6 years ago, John Maxwell was brought in front of me as a speaker, and heard him speak. And I was at a point in my life where I had an interest in going into some, consulting kind of thing, and read one of his books, went to one of his conferences, and decided, I want to start building a leadership business, company culture business, which I did on a part-time basis. Then about 2 years ago, I looked at my calendar and I'm like, I don't have enough vacation time to be able to do the leadership work I want to do. So I met with the board, and I offered, what if I took a reduced time and we could do some other things with the money to help in other parts of the organization. And they weren't interested in that. And I totally respect that. I get that. Right. So I made the decision that I'm going to be a full-time entrepreneur at the age of 63. So November of 2021 was my last, November 5th was my last day. And now I'm a full-time entrepreneur, solopreneur, actually, and loving every minute of it. I can't wait to do my taxes in 2020 to see how I ended up. I'm not a C personality style, so I don't have all this data to tell you about how I did it, but we still live in the same place, and we're eating, and we're able to go to Jamaica for my daughter's wedding. So it's working okay so far. But and my 4 daughters are all in great positions. They all have good jobs, and they're in the area basically. And one's finishing up a master's degree. So blessed with that. And I've got an understanding wife, or I think she's understanding. But I've been blessed, and I'm loving every minute of it.
I love that. Hey, well, thank you so much for spending the time, for joining us today, for showing up as your credible self. Thank you so much. And for those of you that are still here, this is now the time to spread some cred dust. Click on the like button, share with your friends, pull out that aha message that was just so important to you, so valuable for you. And I want to say, if you want to live and be and act credible, just like we just heard, we do have the Ultimate Credibility Bootcamp. And so I'll make sure that link is in the chat. We do this once a quarter. And so you could go to the page, you can click on the QR code or scan in the QR code and get to it. It's ultimatecredibilitybootcamp.com. And it's an event that helps you not just articulate your purpose and focus. It's an event that allows you to show up in the room credibly, like Todd did today. And also, how do you do it asynchronously? How do you show up in your social media and your websites in a credible way? And I want to say thank you so much for joining us today. Todd, once again, you were spectacular. Appreciate the comments and feedback in the audience. Look forward to seeing you at the next episode of Leaders Living Their Values. Take care, everyone. Bye now.